Hello everyone and welcome back to the den. It has been a few weeks since I've actually made a video. I've had quite a few sound issues and a few other things going on, busy weeks, so I haven't been able to make anything. So it's been quite good though, because I've been able to reflect on my last top 10 video, which appeared to cause quite a stir, which is fine. If you're going to put your opinion out there on the internet, you've got to expect people to disagree with it, and I haven't got a problem with that. People did get quite emotional, particularly about the placement of Underworld and a few other teams that perhaps they thought should have been in the top 10. So I've decided to take a different approach to this top 10. Instead of saying this is the top 10 best general skills, I appreciate best is always it's always provocative language that can rub people up the wrong way. And I would hate anyone to think that I am giving misinformation to the Blood Bowl community and the wider world. So therefore, it's not top 10 best general skills. It's my top 10 favourite general skills. That way there can be no argument that it's purely my opinion and it's what I like. However, you can also look at that. If I like them, there's probably a good chance that I think they're good. So yeah, we're going to do the top 10 general skills. Now I know there's only 12 to choose from. So I had another comment saying, well, why are you doing a top 10 video but there's only 16 teams? I'm like, well, so there's 16 then, so I can rank them. And it's the same here. So we'll end up mentioning all skills. I'll mention 2 as honourable mentions, and then I'll put the others in the order I like them in. Why? Because I just like ranking things. And other people like ranking things. So let's have a jolly good ranking. Okay, here we go. So, I'm going to start off with the honourable mentions first. So, basically, the 11th and 12th skills, the 2 general skills that I probably think are my least favourite, but the one thing I would say is general skill tree is by far my favourite. And I think most Blood Bowl players would agree that it's the strongest skill tree. Not necessarily for every single positional, but as a general, wide-reaching view, I think the general is the strongest. If you have to random in any category, randoming in general tend to be the favoured one. So, which are the 2 that I've ranked towards the bottom? And this doesn't mean that they're bad, and actually the one that I'd say is the least my least favourite of all of them does still have some utility, and the honourable mention goes to shadowing. So shadowing, the player can use this skill when an opponent leaves a square that he was marking. Roll a d6 plus the movement of this player minus the movement of the opponent. On a roll of 6 plus or on a natural 6, this player can move into the vacated square without a dodge roll. So the unfortunate thing about shadowing is it's most effective on fast players who can who find it easier to see the skill work. The downside is most fast players are the kind of players you don't really want marking opposition players. So on the whole, that hurts shadowing because its effectiveness is higher with players who don't really want to use it. And that is the big trouble with it. However, it doesn't mean that it's not useful. I've used it when I've randomed it on a gutter runner, and so then I've built a gutter runner into a tackle, wrestle. Obviously, it already has dodge, diving tackle, just to make an absolute menace, a nightmare to deal with. Because if anyone tries to dodge away, there's a good chance he's either taking them down or following them. So you're required to punch him, and then with block or wrestle with sidestep, they can just be an absolute nightmare to deal with. Plus, I once randomed it on an Orc lineman. Now, straight away, anyone would fire that Orc lineman. Movement 5 with shadowing, what's the point? It's increasing your team value, and it's never going to work. Well, I didn't fire him purely because I had such a low TV team at the time. I just carried on with him for a bit and thought, well, I'll fire him off when he gets an injury or when I can afford a better positional. And I actually rolled 6 several times when shadowing. And the Orc lineman is a perfect person to actually use shadowing because he's exactly the kind of player you want marking because he's high armour and he's just going to be an annoyance. Obviously, I do not suggest you go down that route because it's not going to work very often. You literally need to roll a natural 6. But I actually did manage it on a couple of occasions. So yeah, shadowing, my least favourite. Probably the one, if I'm randoming on like a general lineman, it's the one I don't really want to see. But that's shadowing. And then the other one I'd put into a similar bracket of being one that I'm not over the moon at seeing when I random it is Fend. Now, it might surprise some people because there's a lot of people out there who like Fend. But for me, I don't see many people choosing Fend as a skill. on any positional. There's usually always better skills to pick, and this reflects the skill tree. So Fend, an opposition player who pushes this player cannot follow up, cannot be used after a chain push, nor against a player who has ball and chain or juggernaut. If Fend was in another skill tree, it would be a lot more popular, because it's not a bad skill, it's a good skill, but I tend to find it's the most useful when it's naturally on the players, like with the Imperial Nobility team, because then when all of the players are doing it and they're kind of doing it for free, it's really useful and it really annoys your opposition. And don't get me wrong, when you random this skill on a player, it's great because that the opposition won't necessarily be expecting it, or if they've spotted that he's got Fend, it will change their gameplay, or they'll forget about it, and then when you come to fend them off and they expect it to follow up, they'll be really annoyed. So it isn't bad, it's great. It's just that I don't see you picking it, over a lot of the other skills in this skill tree, even for linemen. And the kind of linemen that might get it, or blockers perhaps, I've already, are not going to get that far in their development, or will die, or will have been choosing other things. So it's not so much that I don't think it's any good, it just, I never find myself choosing it. So yeah, that's why it is in 11th place. Okay, now on to the top 10. And in 10th spot, I've put Dauntless. So, Dauntless. When this player attempts a block or a blitz on a target whose strength is higher than his own, before any assists, but after other modifiers, the strength of the player is added to the d6 result. If the total is superior to the target's strength, the strength of the player is increased to be equal of that of the target. So, in a nutshell, if you're trying to block a player who's got 1 strength higher than you, you've got to roll a 2+, and then you can equalise the strength. If you're trying to take on a big guy with a strength 3, it's going to be on a 3+. So it is really useful. Again, a bit like Fend, it's a sort of skill you don't mind having on a few players, but probably isn't a priority pick. And in fact, you might choose it on a certain player who you think is going to get stuck in, particularly if you're expecting to face a lot of big guys or high strength teams. And it can be really useful that way, particularly mixed with guard, allowing you to get that assist to make it even a 2-die block when you're blocking somebody. So it is useful. Again, it's down as far as this because it's a victim of the other skills being just brilliant, really. But definitely has its place, Dauntless. It's a decent skill. It's just not, in my opinion, I don't like it as much as the others. Okay, in number 9, and I can't believe I'm putting this as low as I am, but I'm going to say my 9th favourite is now Sure Hands. So there'd have been a time when Sure Hands would have been my number 1 pick. So this player can re-roll a pickup test manoeuvre. The strip ball skill cannot be used against this player. So back when I first started Blood Bowl in the mid-90s and I was a young lad, I thought Sure Hands was the best thing. I'd be putting it on all my players. I'd be like, why wouldn't I want to be able to re-roll to pick up the ball? But that was when I was young, inexperienced, and you just think it's about the ball to begin with. But the reality is you don't need many people to be able to pick up the ball. 1 or 2. And there are other skills that you can use, particularly on Chaos Undivided teams where you've got access to mutations. You've even got extra arms, which some people might go for instead of Sure Hands. So it's seen its usefulness and my love for it drop down the pecking order over the years. But it's still really useful to have. You're always probably going to want one player who's got Sure Hands, unless you're really dialing up on the bash side of the game and you're expecting to wipe out your opponent and have multiple turns to pick up the ball. Or that you've got access to team rerolls and leader. That's another way around it. But again, having one player with Sure Hands can be really useful. A lot of teams obviously come with a player with Sure Hands, and those players will often get picked. But nevertheless, you might decide that you don't want that positional. Like maybe you don't in the Orc team, you don't want to take the thrower, but so you're going to put Sure Hands on one of your blitzers. And just Sure Hands gives you a few more options. Again, it's down as low as it is because you're not going to have it on many players. But if you manage to random it on a player, like let's say on a stunted team, they've got general skills on secondary, you random Sure Hands, you'd be very happy with that. Just like you'd be happy if you randomed it on most teams and you've got your one player with Sure Hands, you're set then, aren't you? So yeah, I would put Sure Hands in 9th spot. In 8th, we've got kick. If this player is the kicker of the ball at kickoff, you can choose to have the deviation of the ball by d6 divided by 2, rounding any fractions down. So basically, it allows you to control where the kick lands a little bit more. You can almost guarantee it's going to go into one of the 4 quarters of the pitch then. And that can be really, really useful for your strategy. If you want to kick short, making sure that the opponent has to cover the ball quickly, or you know, if you manage to kick short and get yourself a blitz, you can even get under the ball, or get a cage around the ball before it's even landed. So there are really useful elements to kick. I usually like to kick deep and split the opposition's team, but nowadays people tend to wise to that, and they won't split the team. They'll just send a player back. But again, if you've got fast players, then it allows you to get round the back and put pressure on the ball carrier. So generally, I know some people wouldn't say it's useful on all teams. I find kick useful on any team. I will utilise kick on any team. But again, the reason I can't put it much higher is you don't need more than one kicker. You only need one. If you random 2, you might keep the second one around as a backup kicker, but you certainly don't want more than that. And ideally, it's just the one. So I can't really say it's one of my favourite skills when I'm going to be utilising a lot of the other skills a lot more often. But nevertheless, one kicker on my teams is crucial, and I will always look to try and get one with kick. Usually through randoms, though. I will fish for it until I get it. Very rarely picking it unless it's for a tournament or a specific build. But yeah, number 8, kick. At number 7 spot, I think some people will rank this next one higher, but I've put dirty player. So during a foul action performed by this player, the result of the armour roll or the injury test can be modified by the amount shown in the brackets above, and it's dirty player +1. So essentially, it's like a mighty blow on a foul, which can be really useful because what makes it in some ways better than mighty blow is you can utilise all the assists with the foul and dirty player to get through armour, or you use your assists to get through the armour and then guarantee a mighty blow hit on the injury roll. So in some ways, it's even more potent than mighty blow. But in other ways, it's not, because you can only get foul once per turn, whereas you can block and blitz as many times as you've got opportunities to. So it's not, for me, as powerful as mighty blow. However, again, having a player, a bit like kick with dirty player, especially if you can synergise that with sneaky git, is really, really useful. And that's why you got to love it. Now, this is slightly lower down on mine than other people. It's because overall, I'm not a massive fouler. A lot of people build their entire games around blocking and blitzing and fouling because they're looking for removal and potentially even to pitch clear. And it's never been the way I've played Blood Bowl. I will utilise it. I will definitely foul. You know, if my opposition's best player is on the floor and I've got players around, I am going to stick the boot in. I'm not against fouling by any means, but it's not a key part of my play style. And the teams I tend to play aren't always teams that would be up for a fouling. Plus, I do like utilising this, with sneaky git, and for that you need somebody with access to, preferably access to agility as well as general. And there aren't that many players who have them both, and usually those are players that you want doing different things. But you certainly want 1 or 2 dirty players in your team, which is probably why it's, for me, I prefer it to kick and sure hands. However, again, as we go up the list, there's going to be other skills that I'm going to want to see on more players, which is why they're there. Anyway, dirty player +1 in 7th spot. Okay, now into the top half. In number 6 spot, I've got Frenzy. Frenzy's a bit of a polarising one, I've found with my experience of Blood Bowl, both on tabletop and on the game. So, what is Frenzy? Each time this player carries out a block action, he must attempt a follow-up. Each time it is possible, he must then attempt a second block action against the same... He must then attempt a second block action against the same target. A player with this skill cannot have grab. So, Frenzy is a bit of a... what's the word I'm looking for? It can be good and bad, basically. You've got to know how to use it, because if you just block and blitz away without too much care, Frenzy's going to get your players into trouble. Often people will trap you into using your frenzy in an attempt to see a turnover. So where you go blocking in with what seems like a favourable block, and then you follow up with the frenzy, and it ends up being a bad block because you've run into more defensive assists. And so what may have started as a 2-die block can sometimes turn into a 2-die up block. However, it's also really useful, particularly for ball strippers, because they'll get multiple attempts to block the player, and also on players that you want to remove, because let's say there's a war dancer where you need a natural POW. If you can get enough assists and utilise a frenzy piece, you can get 6 dice, and then you've got that chance of hitting that side of the dice that you want. So it is really useful, and you see the teams that have got frenzy wide, like I know they're not in the game yet, but Korn, for example, got a lot of frenzy. That's difficult to manage because you don't have the option really to turn it off, because most players have got it. Whereas when you can choose it, as long as you know which players are the frenzy players, you can utilise them when you need them. And you will find that players, once they've got block, and they've got, like say if they've got Chaos Warriors, they might go block, guard, claws, mighty blow, and then they might go for frenzy in there as well, just because by then they're quite a good unit, and having that player with their highest strength frenzying through the ranks is nothing but good. So I do like frenzy, and I love it on a strength 4 player, because once they've got block, sometimes it doesn't even matter if you head on into trouble with defensive assists, because you've already got the highest strength. And when you coincide that with players with guard, you can really make good use of frenzy. So yeah, I like frenzy. I will not often pick it, if I'm honest, but when I get a random on frenzy, I'm usually pretty excited, because I can then try and build that player accordingly from that to be a bit of a killer, or maybe even a ball stripper. This is why Witch Elves are so useful at stripping the ball, because they come with frenzy. Same with Troll Slayers. There's lots of players who actually have frenzy already, and they are pretty popular. So yeah, in 6th spot, it's frenzy. And in number 5, I was just talking about it, strip ball. So, strip ball. When choosing pushback on a block action against a player carrying the ball, the latter falls into the destination square and bounce. Did I read that right? I felt like I didn't read that right, but is that because it's written wrong? When choosing pushback on a block action against a player carrying the ball, the latter falls into the destination square and bounce. No, that is badly written, isn't it? But basically, if it's a pushback, you're stripping the ball and it's going to bounce into an adjacent square. Some people wouldn't value this as high. It's crucial to have, I think, one player with strip ball. Like I've said with a lot of these general skills, it's definitely you want it on at least one player, and that player is going to be the person who's going to try and sack the ball, because it doesn't matter if they're a blodger, if they've got other defensive skills. If you've got strip ball, if you get that push, unless they've got sure hands, you're going to be knocking that ball out. Then obviously you stack that with tackle and wrestle, you've got a real good chance of turning the ball over, and then it's just a question of getting out the ball carrier. If you've got this on a multiple players, then it means that the opposition player's got to really think about who they want to take out or who they want to avoid if they think that this is going to come into play. So again, there's not much to choose between for me: strip ball, frenzy, dirty player, kick, and sure hands, because they're all kind of 1 or 2 player skills, specialist skills that you want on certain players. But there's nothing more satisfying than sending a player in and taking the ball out. So I always love having a couple of strip ball players. Out of the 3 ball sacker skills, the 3 primary ones, it is my least favourite, as you've probably noticed, because the other 2 haven't popped up yet. However, it doesn't mean I don't like it. I still love it, and yeah, I'll definitely have 1 or 2 players with strip ball on most teams. At number 4, it's Pro. So, Pro, what is it? During his activation, this player can re-roll a dice, except for armor, injury, and casualty tests. On a 3+, on a d6, he can re-roll his dice. So basically, you can just you can roll a dice, and if you roll 3+, you can re-roll your failed dice roll. And it doesn't even have to be a failed dice roll. You can take it from a pool of dice. So if you've done a 2-die block and you get a both down and a push, you can think, well, the push is safe, so I'm going to try and use pro to re-roll the both down. Or again, if you get skull, you've got a chance of rectifying one of those skulls. So it is useful. And what I love about pro, and this does come from my history of being a vampire player, is it can be really useful on so many different players, because it's like an extra built-in reroll. You can use it for dodging, you can use it for blocking, you can use it for failed negatrates. It's just really useful. It's not automatic, because you have to roll 3+ to activate it first, and there'll be times where you don't. But I've randomed pro a few times on Beastman, on I think I did it once on a Gutter Runner, and the amount of times I've gone, oh, I failed. Oh, I've got pro. I'll see if that works, and it does work, and it makes a difference. I had in my Chaos Chosen playthrough, I had a player with pro, and he came up trumps several times, and it was really useful. So I do love pro. Again, would I pick it on many players? Not necessarily, but I'd be always happy to see it on a random. And big guys, especially, if you went for a general random, there's only probably 3 skills you'd be hoping to get, and that would be block, tackle, and pro. So it's one of those skills that can be so useful on a variety of players, which is why I'm putting it in 4th spot. Okay, now on to the top 3. It's hard to choose between the next 2, because they both kind of do a similar job, but I've gone with Wrestle. So, Wrestle. This player uses this skill on both down result. When he is the initiator of the target of a block action, sorry about that. Instead, the 2 players are placed prone without taking into account any other skills they may have, and a no turnover is caused. So, basically, when you haven't got block or wrestle, if you get a both down, both players fall to the ground, and you do an armor roll for both, and they could both potentially become injured. With block, when you get both down, if both players have got it, neither player goes down, and the activation ends. With wrestle, if either one has got wrestle, it kind of supersedes block, and then both players will go to the ground, but they'll only be prone. No player is there's no injury roll taken, and their activation ends, but no turnover is caused. So Wrestle is really useful in a number of ways. First of all, it's great for trying to sack the ball. Often ball carriers have got block, so it's just another way of trying to pop that ball out. And okay, might not be hurting the player, but even if they've got block, you're going to be dragging that player down. And it's not a turnover, so you've then got potential for another player to come in and either mark the ball or scoop up the ball. Secondary useful for if you're playing against a lot of block players, you can frustrate them by, instead of them utilising their both down to hurt you, you end up dragging them down on their turn, and then on your turn you're up first, and they're going to have to spend your turn on the floor. So I love it. It's really useful. It does come with one concern that you have to be aware of, and that is that your players are going on the floor. So if it happens in your turn, it means your opposition has one less player to deal with, and your player is prone on the floor and prime target for a fouling. So you might not want Wrestle on your most valuable players, particularly those players who are hard to take out. You could be just offering them up on a plate. But nevertheless, it's a really useful skill. You will be picking Wrestle on at least 1 or 2 players, I imagine, and if you've got it on a random, you'd be delighted. So really top general skill this, and you'll see in most games you'll see 1 or 2 players with Wrestle. Number 2, I've gone with Tackle. Yeah, I've actually decided I like Tackle more than I thought. Some people wouldn't put it this high. Again, a bit like the ones I said earlier on the list. Dirty Player, Frenzy, Kick, Sure Hands. Some people might only utilise it once. But for me, Tackle is it's really useful. So what does it do first? Prevents opposition players in squares marked by this player from using the dodge skill. And that sounds like it's only a one-time thing, but that means that if they want to dodge away from you, they can't. They can't use the skill. And if they want to... Basically, the power with the exclamation mark. If that comes up, if the player's got dodge, they cannot use dodge to stay on their feet. You're taking them down anyway. So who's it useful for? Anybody who's going to be blocking a dodge player, it's really useful for. It's really useful for marking a player with dodge, because they can't use that dodge skill to get away from you. It's really useful in tandem with diving tackle, because now to dodge away from you, not only do they not get their reroll, but it's a -2 as well. And then you throw in skills like sidestep and shadowing, and it can be a real nightmare to deal with. So a harassment player could use it, a ball sacker could use it, and also a player that's going to be looking to remove players, a killer, because they can utilise tackle to affect that block dice to bring more players to the ground. The only real downside to tackle is if you face a team that doesn't have any dodge, and then you've kind of wasted that value of that skill increase because it's not able to be used. But it's not often you find teams that have absolutely no dodge. Even if the opposition has one dodge player, it's useful to have tackle, because often that one dodge player is somebody who's going to be doing quite a bit of shenanigans, either with the ball or as a blitzer. So you want to get into them. Don't forget a lot of stunties. Well, until the gnomes came along, all stunties had dodge. You've got your Skaven, your Wood Elves, you've got your Witch Elves on your Dark Elf team. So many players start out with dodge. And a lot of people obviously love dodge and will put dodge on other players as well. So I just think tackle's crucial, and I love having tackle on my team. I love that confidence to go in and try and take out blodgers and other players with dodge. So yeah, for me, number 2. And finally, we come to number 1. It's going to be no real surprise to anyone. And remember, this is top 10 favourite skills, but I'd also put this number 1 if it was the top 10 best skills as well. And that is block. And the reason is because it's probably the most widely seen taken skill. When you go to tournaments, when you play online, people just love block. And it's also on a lot of starting players. You've got blitzers that often blitzers have block. You'll go straight on blockers. It just gives you that level of consistency that you want when you're playing Blood Bowl. So what does it say? This skill allows the player who possesses it not to be knocked down when a both down is chosen on a block action. It sounds so simple, doesn't it? But it is so useful. And of course, the other thing that we love about block is it's useful on the attack and the defence. A lot of the players we put block on are actually not necessarily players that we want to be blocking, but it's players we know are going to be targets because we want them to stay on their feet. So when you get that both down result, your fragile, dashy player can stay on their feet, unless, of course, they've got Wrestle. So block is useful on the offensive when you want to remove players, because it means you affect the block dice, and you can stay on your feet and have more confidence to get stuck into melees, but also it protects you on the defence. Some people might suggest that other skills are more important than it, particularly on things like blockers, where you might want guard or mighty blow first, but we're only talking about the general skill tree. And I'll be honest, I'd be always happy with anyone who random block. I can't think of a single player where block wouldn't be useful. Throwers, useful to stop them getting hit. Catchers, very useful, particularly if they've already got dodge. Blitzers already come with block, but your blockers and your strength 4 players. Big guys, block is a dream. Dream to have block. Normally you have to save for it, but if you were to random it on a big guy, you'd be so happy. Stunties. Okay, they'll be expensive because it's a secondary skill, but you wouldn't mind 1 or 2 stunties with block. It's going to make them an absolute nightmare to deal with. So yeah, it is boring, it is predictable, but block is my favourite skill. I love block. It's probably my favourite skill in the game, not just this skill tree. So yeah, that is my top 10 favourite general skills. For the next one, I think we'll move on to agility skills, which aren't quite as well loved as the general skills. And again, these are only top 10 favourite skills. They're not necessarily the best skills in the game. So if you watch this and you think, he's got that totally wrong, he doesn't know what he's talking about, this skill should be much higher up, that's fine, that's great. You can do your own top 10 favourites, and that'll be very interesting to see. But that's it for me now. Hope you've enjoyed the video, and don't forget to comment or like or even subscribe if you want to watch more content, and I'll see you all on the next video. Thank you very much. Bye.